Welcome into another edition of the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. You guys know what week it is. It is Texas A&M and Texas on November 30th, the game that it feels like everybody's been talking about for the last 12 months. And we got a very special guest today. Josh Pate is joining us this morning. Josh, thanks so much for joining us. And thanks again for taking some time.
Yeah, man, this is an important week. It's an important week for anyone because it's Thanksgiving week. Then we, in this world, know that you give some time to the family, you give some time to togetherness and fellowship, but somewhere around midday Thursday to especially late in the afternoon, your attention just shifts right back to it's Texas week. We got Texas in 48 hours.
Yep, no doubt. And you starting out with just like a big picture look at this, right? The rivalry is back, and you just look at the stakes of this game. An SEC title berth is on the line for Texas A&M. It's the difference between an 8-4 season and going to the SEC title game for the first time. Just what do you make of like the stakes, how crazy that is from a Texas A&M standpoint, and just the game overall?
Feels like a good preview of what could be things to come. I think when Mike took the job, most people probably looked at the roster and said, okay, I believe in him long-term, but there's an outside shot he could do something this year. There are good enough players on this team where he could do something this year. So here we are. We're however many weeks later, and that's what they're in position to do. Now, Saturday will feel like the edge of a cliff. So you're not thinking about the future when you're playing Texas. It's in the moment. We got to beat them. We got to go to Atlanta. But to me, holistically, win or lose by 10 points Saturday, they're set up very well for the future. But we've got plenty of time to talk about the future. In the here and now, they just went on the road and they lost to Auburn. Ole Miss just went on the road and they lost to Florida. Bama went on the road. They lost to OU. To me, the only thing that changes here dynamics-wise is now you get to come home, and Texas has to be the one that goes on the road. And I think what will probably be the environment of the year in college football, if my guess is correct. So now you get a chance to bloody someone else the way you got bloodied last week. And the good news about that is it's not one of those situations we see a lot in college football where your season gets wrecked and your only like remedy left is to wreck someone else's season. You still got everything in front of you. You win and you're in the big dance. So it's best of both worlds, as crazy as that sounds, considering you're coming off a loss.
At Texas A&M, like a month ago, it felt like they sat in a great spot, and they still obviously control kind of their path to Atlanta, but go on the road and lose to South Carolina. They go on the road and lose to Auburn. How much do you feel like that might be, like we just talked about, that byproduct of having to go on the road at night and play in two really difficult environments? Or are there other maybe issues that have popped up that you've kind of seen over the last month?
A little bit of both. I mean, I certainly have not been overly inspired by A&M's defensive performance. I think that side of the ball has let them down the stretch a little bit. I am a little concerned about the slow starts in several of these games. Yeah. But also, we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't acknowledge what playing on the road in the SEC is all about. This is something that you can try in vain to explain to the national crowd, and they'll just accuse you of SEC bias, and it is whatever it is. But I'll just say I had a head coach from another conference text me during the A&M Auburn game, as I think of it, and they said the difference in the 5 and 5s in the SEC is you may be playing in front of 90,000 fans against a team with 10 to 15 NFL players on the roster in that conference. And if that team just hadn't gotten its act together, that's the 5 and 5 team. So it doesn't change that their record is what it is, but you get that 5 and 5 team on the wrong night, and it doesn't matter that they're 5 and 5. It didn't matter that Florida was that way Saturday. It didn't matter that OU was that way, and it didn't matter that Auburn was that way. You get them in their building, that place is still charged late in the year, and those guys are still all in. They still have something to play for. You're just playing against a bunch of future Sunday guys. So that's the nature of this conference. Now, the plus side is when you play in the SEC, it gets you a lot of benefits. You get access to a lot of money. You get access to a lot of talent because kids want to commit to schools, and so they can play in the SEC. So there's a flip side to all that, but there's a downside to it as well.
No doubt. And just looking, obviously this week actually will be 1 year since Mike Elko arrived in College Station. And I both know kind of the job he had to take over and everything he's had to do in the last 12 months. What do you make of just the job he's done in his first year?
I think a lot of it will pay dividends down the road. You're kind of
Yeah.
seeing what you're seeing in front of you right now, but I really think the recruiting profile, or should I say the talent acquisition profile for this team, is very intentional. The evaluation profile for this staff is very intentional. I've been around them a little bit. I know how methodical they are in their process. It's not knee-jerk. It's not very quick. Like I said, I use the word methodical for a reason. That's how I view them. It starts with Mike Elko, but that just kind of permeates all the way down the tree. I believe that they uniquely understand how to sell Texas A&M to kids instead of going out and being the highest bidder for guys. I think they understand some of the pitfalls of the way previous staff has gone about it there, partly because they were a part of it. And I think that they are, and Mike Elko, I say they, but Mike Elko and his staff, I think they're uniquely positioned and equipped to, if things fall the right way, if they adhere to their principles and values, to enter Texas A&M into what should be a golden age for the program, because there's nothing standing in their way. They're very well positioned. Nothing is hamstringing them. There's no NCAA sanctions or anything like that. Everything's in front of them, and the table's sort of set. I just look at it as it's time to put the meal on the table, and I think you got the right staff there to do it. So this year is just, it's a nice little appetizer, I guess. I know an A&M fan doesn't feel that way, but from the outside looking in, I look at this as, hey, if he can deliver something in year one, that's a nice bonus. But what I'm really excited about is the years to come, ironically, even as we're talking in the middle of Texas week.
You look at maybe a part of that future is obviously Marcel Reed, and they made the switch to him earlier this fall. What have you made of his performance, especially over the last month or so?
It's admirable. I think that, I was out there for the Missouri game, and I'm pretty sure Missouri prepared for him all week, and then they got Wigman, and then you insert him against, I think it was South Carolina, and so they've had both guys do good things at various points this year. But I think when I look at Marcel, for the back half of the season, I just look at him. The Auburn game's a good example. If he and that offense are scoring into the 30s, that should be good enough to win. Honestly, the high 20s should be good enough to win against Auburn. And it wasn't, and that's not on him per se. Same thing this Saturday. Texas is not a team that's been lighting the scoreboard up. They're good. They're not great offensively. You've got them in your building. And so if that is a very complimentary approach, and you're asking Texas A&M's offense to do enough, to be efficient and to do enough, that's Marcel Reed's wheelhouse. What you can't be doing is trailing 10-0 or 13-0 early and saying, hey, let's go play catch up. That is not good, because that Texas defense is not the kind of defense you want to be trying to do that against.
No doubt. You look at this rivalry overall. You've obviously been to some of the really good ones over the years. Where do you feel like this Texas A&M Texas one kind of stacks up against the others?
Right now, it doesn't, but that's because people haven't seen it in so long.
Right.
I've probably talked 1,000 times about this over the course of this year, going back to spring. When you understood that this game was back, if you understand the magnitude of the game and the rivalry, it was one you circled a long time ago. And I remember we were doing a segment about it, and there was someone in my audience, maybe like 20, 21 years old, so a young adult. And they asked me, not sarcastically, they literally asked me, why do you keep hyping up Texas versus Texas A&M so much? And it dawned on me that the entire younger generation does not really have a firm grasp on the hatred and the vitriol that exists between these two, because they hadn't played in 11 years, I think it is, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 11 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that the circumstances are what they are, because it forces the group of people that care just about the playoffs even to watch this game, because there are playoff implications on it, which means it'll be sort of presented to the whole world, and they'll get to see again something that those of us who watched it a generation ago already understood. And this thing's really nasty, and it matters a lot. And these two programs aren't separated geographically by a whole lot, but in theory, they're separated in every way imaginable. One is not like the other. And it's so fun. It's so fun to watch that go head to head. And then to understand Sark has sort of got things rolling the way he wants to. Mike Elko, we think, will. But if he were to clip him in year one in the process, what a story that would be.
Now, diving in a little bit into this game, you look at Texas A&M, and what do you feel like they have to do if they're going to come out with a win on Saturday night? What do you feel like are some of the keys that they have to accomplish?
Probably third. I think the third, and I really think staying ahead of the chains firstly, and then secondly, the third and 4 or less plays, they just have to convert. They have to control the game as much as they can. I also think they have to find a way to neutralize Texas's pass rush a little bit. And then conversely, they got to get after Quinn Ewers. They've got to get after him, and they got to do the same thing to Texas that Ole Miss did to Georgia. Ole Miss got a lead on Georgia, but then they had that home crowd and that pass rush sort of sink its teeth in a little bit, and Georgia was discombobulated all afternoon long. That can be what happens here. Again, Texas offensively, I've seen them in person, I think 2 or 3 times this year. They're very good, but they are not, pop you ball over the top after ball over the top. That's not who they are right now. I think they want to be that, but they're not that, which means the game should be not easy for you, but it should be more comfortable and in your wheelhouse of the style of game that you want to play. And at that point, it's so simple. Everyone says it every week. You just got to go execute. You got to appreciate what's in front of you, not at the macro level, but at the micro level of doing your job, play to play, series to series. If you do that, you're plenty good enough. Texas A&M's plenty good enough to be there in the end and to come out on top in the end.
When you look at Texas, what do you feel like are some things that maybe, and I have a couple that I in mind, but what do you feel like Texas A&M might have trouble with Texas, or where the Longhorns might give them trouble?
I think what I just said with A&M, staying ahead of the chains is something that's easy to say. Texas can wreck you, though. Texas can really get after you defensively. They make it hard on people. And that's not to say you can't score on them, but when you do, you've earned it. And so if you do not do that, if you cannot stay on schedule offensively, if you can't, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we saw at the end of that Auburn game the other night, very catchable ball. It's just dropped. That's a fundamental thing that happens every day in practice. And because the moment's different, the execution is different. That's one player, and I'm not trying to focus on one player because it's a team thing. You have to do those things. You and I both know every year there's several games where you watch in a big game, there's a team that just looks like it can't miss. There's a team that just keeps converting on third down, and they keep doing the little things the right way. And it's so shocking how many games you can win if you do nothing more than just do the ordinary stuff the right way. That stuff stacks up, and it starts to put pressure on the other guy because a team like Texas gets so accustomed to the opponent beating themselves because the opponent knows Texas is probably better than me, so I got to go do something above and beyond what I normally do to beat them. And that attitude normally gets you beat because you try and do more than you're capable of, and you end up screwing up the stuff you are capable of. If you don't overthink the room, trust your preparation, trust your personnel, and know, hey, we're on the same field as them for a reason, that's it. It's so simple to say. It is much harder to execute.
No doubt. Going to be a really good one in College Station. I know you'll be down there, right, for the game. So for fans down there, be sure to give Josh a hello. He'll be down there for, I think, is this your second time down there this fall?
Yeah, and the last time was an A&M blowout, so that bodes well.
There we go. That's what we need. So, Josh, thanks again for joining us. Have a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the time down in College Station this weekend.
I appreciate it. Same to you.
Thanks, man.